everyone. I am Melissa Forziat. I'm a keynote speaker and the host of this Halt and Catch Fire rewatch podcast. When I speak, my topic is something I call Take the Doughnut, which for me is another way of saying carpe diem, seize the opportunity. And what I wanted to seize this year was rewatching Halt and Catch Fire, but this time actually talking about it with other people. So I want to thank you all for joining me on this ride. This has been so much fun to do, and I'm really excited to dig into this episode, which is season 2, episode 3, called The Way In. Now, this originally aired June 14th, 2015. It was directed by Jeff Freilich and written by Jason Cahill. Here's the description. Cameron has a difficult time adjusting to Mutiny's new hire, Tom Rendon, who expresses his disagreements with some of her ideas. Gordon and Donna reunite with Joe at a dinner party, and Bosworth tries to reconnect with his family. So that, it broadly covers some of the ground. I think it doesn't necessarily address some of the Sonara stuff that's going to become very important. But I really love the Cam and Tom stuff in this episode, and I've been excited to dig into this one because of that, because I have thoughts from previous watches, but I have a feeling that actually talking my ideas out and doing this deep dive will unearth a lot more. So let's see what happens with it. Let's do a scene by scene breakdown here, shall we? So first of all, we're going to open up with the song Good Morning Judge. It's playing diegetically on Gordon's headphones. He's listening to that song as he is coding. Now, Gordon is not an expert in programming, so he's sort of referring back and forth to a book. I don't know what this book is. It's probably some sort of like how to code book. But he keeps referring back to it as he's going through. So we know that he's still learning what he's trying to do as he's doing it, but he has the idea that he wants to map the network. We're going to get that exposition in just a minute, but he's trying to do something helpful to Mutiny. And Donna enters and she's going to say, "Hey, Code Warrior." And I don't know, there's sort of a playful energy about them right now. She's saying the girls are getting ready. Gordon's saying you fell asleep on your transcripts. So I think what's happening here is she keeps pulling transcripts from Community to see what people are talking about and to get a sense of what's happening in the rooms, what rooms are needed. Right now, it's one big space. So Donna says, "Well, it's market research." And Gordon says, "Well, yep, well, let me tell you something. Your network's on the fritz because of freeloaders." So we established that in the last episode. So this feels like one of those things that if you were watching it week to week, they're trying to remind you of where we are in the story by saying, remember, there are people who are getting on the system, but they're piggybacking on other people's accounts. And so they're reminding us of that here because we need to know what he's doing, why he's coding right now. Donna says, "We already know how many subscribers we have." Gordon says, "Yeah, legit ones, but the cheats gobble up your bandwidth. And what if someone were to write a program to find all your users and map the actual size of your network? Aha, it's called Sonaris." So that's what he's working on. And again, this is a rehash of the things that we learned last episode, except he's given the program a name. He's been working on it. He's some number of days or weeks into this process. So Donna's going to laugh at some of the things she's reading in her transcript. There's a comment about U.S.-Soviet relations it says, "Your understanding of U.S.-Soviet relations is as short-sighted as a lemur with cataracts." So she's enjoying the conversations that are happening in this space that she created. Gordon pulls the transcript out of her hand because he's like, "Look, I'm doing all of this for you. Can you just like focus here for a second on the work that I'm doing?" Donna says, "Yeah, you must be enjoying it. I haven't seen you for a couple weeks." So Gordon's become obsessed with this idea, and he's doing this to support Mutiny and to support Donna. She's going to sit on his lap. They're going to get a little flirty. They're going to sort of start to do a role play where she's Lois Lane and he's Superman, Clark Kent, and he's like, he wants to get it on. He's like, "Should I go into a phone booth? Should I put on the glasses?" And Donna looks at her watch, is like, "Gotta go." Just as Gordon's getting excited about things, Donna's like, "Don't forget to give Joni your juice. I gotta run." And so Donna's going to leave. Gordon grabs another Jolt with this soda. I guess it's a soft drink product. He struggles to open it. We're going to see a couple of times in this episode that he's having a hard time, like with his hand strength or with specifically, I don't think it's so much the grip here. I think it's the hand strength itself. But we're going to notice this a couple of times. So his solution, he's going to poke the can with a screwdriver and it's all, all the carbonation's going to spray out all over everything. I mean, doesn't this man work with computer equipment? Don't you know you can't get it wet? You don't want it all sticky from your Jolt. So I don't know. Feels like that's something that was a little more chaotic than it needed to be here for somebody who's an expert with this stuff. But, he's thinking about the fact that he wasn't able to open the can and he says, puny earthling. And by the way, Superman's going to come up a couple different times in this episode. So they're obviously trying to do a pop cultural reference around, his love of that movie, or maybe there was a particular moment. It was a moment in time where it was coming up for him. We're going to go to the mutiny house now. Cam she's at the front door. She's rolling, it looks like a keg out of the house. Tom is walking up with his bicycle. And she says, sorry, is your car in the shop? Tom says, yep. She says, nice wheels. Does it have a horn? He says, I must have left it at home with my clown nose. He sounds kind of defeated. It feels like he didn't necessarily want to be caught walking his bicycle up to the house. He definitely didn't want there to be an assumption that he drives or that he had a car. Something about this feels like, what's happening with Tom here? So Cam's just kind of look confused because he had this clever retort, but there's a real lack of energy behind it. It feels like the word defeat is what came to my head. And so she looks confused. She walks back into the house. He just sort of shakes his head like, oh, what a way to start. It feels like he didn't want to be caught in this moment. And yet, he's walking a bicycle up to the house. Somebody eventually was going to notice the bicycle. So I don't know. We'll have to see where that goes. In other modes of transportation, we're going to get a little Barry and Boz. We're going to see Barry again. Hello, Mike Panuski. So glad to have you back. So Barry has had Boz's car in safekeeping and he's going to uncover it for Boz. And there it is, Boz's Mustang. Boz is like, you got her back. Ginny got the house, the Fed's got everything else, but Boz has the car. Barry says, yeah, not this. Boz is looking pretty satisfied about being reunited with this car, but he also has a depth of appreciation for Barry. He says, I can't thank you enough, Barry. You and Louise, you're holding on to this, putting me up, keeping the jackals at bay. Barry says, yeah, but you put food on my table for 20 years. And this scene certainly reminds me of the conversation that I had with Mike Panuski, if you had a chance to listen to this interview. And he shared a little bit about what he thinks the connection is for Boz and Barry. And, he's just, they're friends. They're friends who were at the helm of this company or in leadership positions at Cardiff Electric. And we can see how loyal Barry is to Boz here. Boz says, is there anything I can do to repay you? Barry's going to give him the keys. And he says, you can get in that tank and drive it like a man. Basically just like, no, man, this is just a thing a friend does for a friend. Boz is going to get in the car. He's going to start the engine and Barry's going to cheer for him. So let's go to Joe's workplace. We're going to go over to West Group Energy and Joe is working. Eugene comes over. He's like, hey, settling in. Joe says, yeah, well, I've got some ideas. If we double check all these documents for scanning errors and, sometimes I see a correlation between them and I make a note of it over here. And if we all do that, we can, Eugene's like, I'm going to stop you right there. You've got great ideas for the wrong department. Says, yeah, data processing. That's on B1. We do data entry. That mainframe, our job, we just fill it up. Joe's like, does that not bother you? Eugene says, no, I know staring at 60 years worth of well depths isn't hair raising, but that's why it helps to have a pastime. Eugene is a guy who's prepared to punch in and punch out at the end of the day. And, he doesn't necessarily aspire to more, and it's his hobbies that are fulfilling him. So, he talks about how the guys have organized a decoy decorating contest. They got a bunch of, like, I don't know, it looks like duck models around that they want to paint or something. He's like, drakes or hens, it's your choice. He says, also, I collect vintage percussion. This weekend I obtained a timbale favored by the great Tito Puente. Joe, it's just sort of, he's just sitting with what all this means for him. It's like Eugene doesn't want more. If he ever wanted more, that was just beaten out of him. He's not interested in it anymore. He's happy to get his vintage percussion and his decoy decorating, and that is enough for Eugene. And you can see that that's not enough for Joe, and it will probably never be enough for Joe. So, he just goes, he says he's going to go to get coffee, and he goes to the server room, the room that with the mainframe, I guess is what I would say. And it's a room, that room, we see that room a number of times in this episode, and it reminds me of his old apartment with all the glass. This is not all glass, but it's very white, very lit up. There's something kind of sterile about it, and it feels like a space where Joe would feel at home. And that is where he goes to think, in this office. So he goes to that room, and he's just going to sigh. He's going to sit against, there's like a bunch of storage units on the wall. He just sits down and he hangs his head and just gives a long exhale. It's like, this is it. This is the only comfort he has, his minutes in this room. So let's go over to Mutiny, and we are going to continue the tradition of programmers pitching game ideas that are not going to happen. So this time it's Lev. Lev is pitching a game that he's going to call Jiggles. He's going to call the game Jiggles. And we're going to see, he's got this beautiful mock-up. He's got a mock-up, an artistic mock-up of this game on like one of those flip charts. And then he's cut out two blue hands reaching for Jell-O on a shelf in a refrigerator. It says, the giant hands reach for your tasty Jell-O chunks. And he's like, you dodge them up, down, shelf to shelf. Nobody looks interested in this game at all. Cam looks uninterested. Tom looks tired, maybe bored. He's like, soon the fridge is empty. It's only you, the Jell-O bowl, that has survived. Nobody likes this idea. Love announces that it's called Jiggles. Cam is going to clap. We're just going to see like a few people clapping. It's lackluster at best. She says, okay, questions, anyone? Arky says, yeah, what flavor is the Jell-O? Love's like, obviously orange. This is bright orange bowl of Jell-O. Bodhi says, Jiggles sounds like a strip joint. Of course, that was what Bodhi would say just then. Love's like, yeah, well, it's not. Carl's like, is there anybody else who's rooting for the hands here? I mean, the family's hungry. You're available. I feel like it's your job to be eaten. Yo-Yo says, unless you're rancid, moldy, like 3 weeks old. Carl says, then we can call it Jell-O Death Wish. Everybody's instantly more interested in this idea than the one that Lev presented. Poor Lev. Nobody seems to pitch ideas that the rest of the team likes on the first shot anyway. And Cam's going to say, let's let it breathe. She turns to Tom. She says, Tom, do you have any ideas? Before I get to Tom, I just noticed, as I was looking at the set decoration for this, there's a couple posters that are very clearly in frame. And I wanted to reference those. One is called A Little Sex, and one is called The Legacy. I'm assuming those are both movies. Do the plots of either of those have any bearing on anything that happens in this season? I just wanted to pose that question to all of you. Is there a particular reason you think that those are chosen here? And I know that I've seen those before. I think The Legacy will play a couple times in the scenes, but what do I need to know about the backstory of those? What is it about those that are particularly curated for this moment? If you have an idea, I'd love to know. So Cam's going to turn to Tom now, who, again, like everybody, looks very bored with all of this and not interested in Lev's idea. And she asks him if he has ideas. Tom says, I'm working on sprite scaling for immersive environments. And she's like, well, does it have a story? Tom says, does it need one? She says, well, yeah, that's kind of how online games work. They're different from the other types of games that you play. And Tom says, are you joking? There are tons of titles that started with tech breakthroughs, and he starts naming some. So they're kind of at odds with this, but are they? Like, what is actually happening here? Because, I think it's interesting. Tom sort of moved heaven and earth to get the attention of the mutiny team so he could ultimately be offered a job and work there. He is one of the users that spent the most, I think he's like number 4 on the list of most users in terms of time spent online. And he obviously loves what they do and spent a lot of time doing it, but here he is, and he doesn't seem that invested. So what's his deal? I feel like that's something that this episode hasn't really brought that to light. And I think I need to understand more about his backstory, which, by the way, we will see more of his story a little bit. That may provide some context, but for the purposes of not spoiling anything and not like looking ahead to give you information for this episode, I mean, I think it's worth saying, like, what is his deal? Because he wanted to work here, and he obviously loves what Mutiny does, and where, what's the struggle? I also don't even really feel like this tension that we see between their ideas, it doesn't feel like a personal tension. It feels like, what it feels like to me is he showed up in this space and he thought it would be like maybe all these great ideas being batted around and all the whatever he loved about Mutiny. He thought he'd be in an office where it was full of that. And he doesn't seem to be finding that in the office right now. Instead, he's being pitched jiggles and getting, a bunch of lackluster ideas that nobody seems to be excited about. So maybe there isn't the energy here that he thought there would be and that he wanted there to be. That's what I put into this scene at this moment in time, and maybe that'll change over time. So Kim's like, let's talk in private. She's then going to hand out a bunch of discs. She's got the 22nd chapter of Parallax. She wants everybody to play with it. They say that way they can debug it, load it onto the network. She says, sound good. Everybody grumbles their agreement. I mean, grumbles their agreement is what I would say happens at the result of this. It's like 22 chapters of Parallax. So we're going to cut from here to, I really enjoy this scene. Boz is driving and singing, and we get driving and singing songs, or we get the scenes where characters are sitting in a car and singing a song. We get this a few different times, and I think it always feels like it's saying something about that character. And Boz singing Rock Island Line by Johnny Cash, or singing along to it because it's actually playing and he's singing along with it. It's just kind of magical. I don't know. Toby Huss, what a lovely little character moment that this is. And by the way, try singing Rock Island Line. This is not an easy song to get. I imagine when Toby Huss saw this in the script, like, how do you even get these words out? It's such a tongue twister. It's so fast. He did an excellent job getting these words out, because my goodness, that song just builds and builds in terms of its speed. So he is driving and he's in a kind of good mood, because why? Well, he's going to the El Royale Motel where his ex-wife is waiting for him. Ginny comes out of her motel room when she sees him pull up. She's like, you're late. She's got a white bra and a jacket, and then she takes off the jacket. And this is some sort of an arranged situation. They're going to enter the room. And I don't think this was the first time. So this is something that they've been doing. They've been meeting up to do this. But before we get any more with them, we're going to go to Sarah. She's in her apartment. She's in their new apartment. They haven't even unboxed everything. There are just a bunch of boxes all over the place. She is typing. She's trying to do work. She doesn't look particularly happy. She groans. And you know what? She agreed to come here for Joe. And, how much does he love his job? Not so much. How much does she love being there? Not so much. They both kind of gave up a lot of things she, agreed to be in this space. I don't know how she felt about sort of caving into her father in that way, but she's doing this to support Joe. And then the phone's going to ring. It's Joe calling. And Sarah's like, yeah, you're early. So he must call every day around a certain time. Gotten into that habit. And Joe is just going to give her the problem of the day. He says, yeah, my scanner can't tell the difference between lowercase i's and l's. Know what every other word is? Oil. They both say oil at the same time. Seems like an obvious issue. Seems like something you would have wanted to fix at some point. Sarah mentions she spent the last hour looking at the window. Joe's like, well, at least you have one. And she says, oh, was moving here a mistake? Did we do the wrong thing? Joe says, well, probably. She says, great, I'll go ahead and pack tonight. Joe says, no, it was a joke. We can't go back to Austin. Your father would flip. Sarah says, I love my dad, but screw him. She starts whining. She hates it when she whines. I mean, I don't know, what a position for her to be in, like to have sort of redirected herself for the man she loves and to have to sort of give in to her father. And in the last episode, we talked a little bit about the tensions that probably existed because of what happened with her previous relationship and her dad being manipulated by her ex. And, Joe jumping through these hoops for her father. Does she want to cater to her dad that much? Does she want to give up her own ideas of what she wanted for Joe to do these things? I don't know. This is a pretty dull time in their lives, it feels like. Joe says, okay, how about this? Here's an idea. Let's have a dinner party with other people. Let's invite some other people like Evan and Alicia. They can drive in, our friends, your friends. And Sarah perks up a bit. She says, how about this? You invite your friends from Dallas. Joe's going to squint just a bit on the other end of the phone. Unless that makes you uncomfortable. Joe's like, no, it sounds fun. It's fine. Eugene's going to lean in. He's going to crowd Joe's space at this moment. He's like, it's not a personal call. Joe's just going to hang up in the middle of Sarah saying, I love you. She's going to get a dial tone. No, I love you back. No response back on that because he's already hung up. I mean, things aren't great for Sarah right now. Things aren't great for Joe right now. Eugene's going to walk away from Joe. Joe's going to stare at him. He's just done with being micromanaged like this. He dials his phone. He picks up the phone. He dials it. And he says out loud to make sure that Eugene can hear everything he says. He says, is Jacob Wheeler in? Yes, it's Joe McMillan. I'd like to make an appointment. Eugene just stares right at Joe like, this guy's trying to call Jacob Wheeler, who runs this company. Eugene clearly has never met Jacob Wheeler. Whoever Joe's talking to, probably Jacob Wheeler's secretary, confirms the appointment. Joe says, okay, 4:00. That works. And as he's saying that, he just looks right at Eugene. Like, you hear that? Got a 4:00 appointment with Jacob Wheeler. Joe's going to hang up and he's going to just stare straight at Eugene, and Eugene's like staring back. It's great. It's not even, can we call that passive aggressive? That can't be. That's got to be somewhere between that and aggressive. I mean, talk about putting your boss in his place. Okay, so we're going to go to mutiny. Donna's printing out more transcripts. She wants to read more people's conversations, but she's pretty excited. She's like, give people dial up. They'll talk about just about anything. She names some things: politics, sports, Kathy Ireland, Billy Joel sucks. Kim's like, wait a minute. Billy Joel has chops. I agree. I enjoy Billy Joel very much. And that's not just the Long Islander and me talking. That is just a fact, guys. Okay. Anyway, so Donna says, yeah, look, I started a discussion on Moog synthesizers. It got 23 replies. I think so. Am I right in thinking that what looks like what I've been calling a keyboard that she has in her garage, is that a Moog synthesizer? Because I looked at a couple pictures of Moog synthesizers online, and it looks kind of like that. So I think that's the instrument that she plays. She asks Cam if she can borrow a coder. She's starting to talk excited and breathlessly. And she says, we need to split community into multiple forums. It's exploding. Cam's like, great. Take Lev. It's fine. Donna says, how many are online right now? Cam says 306. So that's exciting because they've been going up 50 week over week. This business is growing pretty quickly. And Cam says, yeah, well, it's going to be a bloodbath and tank battle. Donna says, well, that's the beautiful thing about our business model. Even the corpses pay to play. So, they're above water. They're not drowning so fast. However you want to look at it, they're growing. Are they growing fast enough? Are they growing quickly enough for, their expenses? Not sure. It doesn't sound like they're seeing a lot of return on it, but they're going to keep moving forward. So let's go to a more bleak conversation. We're going to see Ginny and Boz. They are cuddling. They, just had sex. It seems like this has been happening. Ginny says that she picked up a new long haul route. She must be a flight attendant, I'm thinking. Boz says, well, where's the layover? Ginny says, Tokyo. She says, but that's going to put a serious hitch in these hanky panks. So with that being said in plural, they must have met a few times here now, or some number of times at this motel. Boz says, well, I'll stop by the house. Ginny says, I wouldn't. Boz's smile fades. Boz says, well, what's this about then? She says, well, this is why I married you in the first place. The man in 25B. She kisses him. So apparently Ginny and Boz had quite the physical attraction when it all began. And that's what attracted her to him. But he doesn't like all this realization because I think he thought that I don't know if he thought they were going to get back together, but I think he thought that this was going somewhere. And it doesn't sound like Ginny wants this to go somewhere. Boz says, but I paid for that house that you're in. Ginny says, and now it's mine. And I can do what I want with whom I want. So knowing that, so she's meeting him here. So has she gotten together with somebody else at this point? Boz says, yeah, I get that. I just don't want to feel that there's a broom at my heels to push him out the door. Ginny says, the world didn't stop when you went to prison. She moved on. She's moved on. I'm assuming she's moved on with another person, and that is the person at said house. The room just gets icy, both of them. I mean, he's not so much angry with her. I think it's hitting him what she's saying to him. And she's setting the boundary very clearly. Boz says, are you ashamed of me, Ginny? She says, not anymore. Oh, that's a hard one to hear. Poor Boz. Okay, he says, well, I'll see you this weekend. She says, I hope you're joking, right? We're going to find out later in the episode that the thing that he's talking about is his son's rehearsal dinner for his wedding. He thought maybe he'd be going to that. She's like, you're kidding. No way. No, you're not going to that. You're not part. No. Now, does she not, is it embarrassing to her to have him there after having come out of prison? Is she worried about how her son's going to feel? Is she bringing a new significant other there? She just doesn't want him to assume that he should be going to this. She says, I don't think the time's right. He says, is that why you showed up today, to tell me not to go to Galveston? She says, honestly, I didn't even think I had to. And then she gives this crushing line. She says, we're not your satellites anymore, spinning around the big man. It was a fun ride and a hot show, but this one's not yours. Please don't come. Promise you won't. Buzz just sort of stares off. I mean, the reality here is that it's not just the fact that he went to prison. They were getting a divorce before that, right? And then he went away for all this time. So what would make him think that she wanted to get back together? I think Boz had some time away. He had time to reflect, but that doesn't necessarily mean that changed Ginny's position on this situation. It looks like it didn't. Okay, so we're going to go back to Jacob Wheeler. We've got that 4 o'clock meeting. Jacob's getting off of a phone call. Joe's looking out the window. Jacob sighs. He says, some people just don't want to be saved. This guy, when he says that, I had a visceral reaction when I heard it. I was like, this guy, yuck. He's just assuming that he needs to go around giving lifelines to people. Jacob Wheeler. But I do think he's probably very often being asked for things. He's about to be in this very conversation. He's in a position to grant wishes or not grant wishes. And Jacob thinks that people should be, you know, if he offers to help, people should take it. So Joe's going to jump in. He's going to say, you know, the most common last second regret of suicides, you know, the people who jump off of a bridge, but they fail and they live. What an interesting way to start a sales pitch. Talk about getting somebody's attention. Jacob's like, high school girlfriend. Okay. By the way, Sarah's a girl he knew in college. I don't know. I mean, it's a little bit of a different thing, but how much of a stretch is that? How much of a dig is it? Joe says, no, he like left faucet on, he left the car running, left the fridge open, just like those loose ends. Jacob sees this is going somewhere somehow. He says, let me have it. What's on your mind, Joe? Joe says, okay, here's the deal. You're leaking data that could be used. And he starts pitching the idea. He's going to suggest folding data collection and analysis into one department. He hasn't even gotten a question in there. And Jacob says, great, do it. Who's in charge down there? Joe says, Eugene Bowditch, the guy who stands over you and interrupts your phone calls. And he's got like vintage percussion from Tito Puente. And Jacob's like, okay, so fire him, scrap the entire department, build it from the ground up, go. She was like, really? Yeah, like people are disposable to Jacob Wheeler. I mean, what we saw Joe do with the people at Cardiff Electric was not treating them well. You know, he was prepared to make people pawns in his game. Jacob doesn't even care to use them like that. He's like, get rid of them all. Who cares? This whole conversation gave me a real feeling about Jacob Wheeler, more so than I think I've had on any previous rewatch. So Jacob's going to let HR know. Joe's mouth just drops open. Jacob's like, I never thought you'd stay on the basement level, but if that's your goal, I can't tell with Joe. Joe says, okay, I just need a few days to prepare. And he starts to leave. You know, is he in this moment thinking, great, I'm starting to get some power back. I'm starting to get some trust from Jacob. Is he thinking, should have asked for more, something that I actually want? Because does he really want this? But, you know, baby steps that include firing an entire department worth of people and your boss. So, okay, Jacob is going to stop Joe as he's leaving. He says, a seat opens up on a crowded train. It's okay to hesitate. Maybe you're the next stop. Maybe you're a good Samaritan, or maybe you just think you don't deserve it. there could be all kinds of reasons why you don't take an opportunity that's in front of you. What does Jacob think about where Joe is headed here? Is he impressed that he has ideas? I don't really think so. Does he think maybe Joe's asking for too little? Probably. He didn't think that Joe was going to stay on the basement level, but now Joe's looking to make himself comfortable on the basement level. I don't know. This relationship is pretty fraught. And I don't necessarily know why Joe is engaging in all of this. And I don't know why Jacob's making him jump through these hoops, but it just seems like there's something really toxic underneath all this. So Joe's going to leave. We're going to go back to the Clark household. We're going to start with a close-up shot of voicemail coming in, tape the recorder. And we're going to hear Joe's voice, and we're going to see Gordon and Donna as we sort of pull back. They're huddled over this answering machine. And Joe says, okay, so that's it. Thursday night, 8:00. Hope you guys can make it. Talk soon. I really like the way they chose to do this in terms of how this was written, because we're going to hear the end of the message, and then Donna's going to rewind to play it again. And we're going to hear the beginning of the message. So I like that we did it in that direction, because what it tells me, instead of listening it from front to back, we're listening to it from midway through, rewinding and getting back to the front. And I feel like they've been doing that a few times. They keep rewinding it. They've taken the answering machine from where it was normally located. They've brought it over to the coffee table in the living room. They're huddled over it. They're dissecting it. They keep listening to it. They're rewinding it over and over. And just by starting us in the middle of the message, I feel like I'm already getting all of that. So they look like they're watching a car wreck. And so we're going to hear the beginning of the message where he says, "I'd love it if you could come by for a little dinner party with me and my fiance." Gordon winces in sort of like amusement and delight. Donna just looks shocked. She's going to stop it. And they look at each other because they're thinking the same thing. They're very much on the same page in this episode. Great job to Carrie Bichet and to Scoot McNairy for just, we're so in their heads. They're so on the same page. This is just seamless. Gordon's like, "Fiance." Donna says, am I hallucinating? What's happening here? So he says, "You first." So they've got a game here. It's an unspoken game. They're going to guess who this fiance is. She says, "I'm picturing a perfume model, Dior, Halston, tall, blonde, Daryl Hannah cheekbones, shoulder pads, upper." She's got this whole very posh idea, like a posh version of Cameron. Gordon's like, no. After Cameron, he'd want a follower. So I'm thinking somebody less challenging, somebody like a secretary, like a Joan Baez type. Kittens on the futon. What is that? What's that reference? Kittens on the futon? I guess we'll find out. Donna says, "Wait, so do you want to go to dinner with him?" Gordon says, "Yeah, but aren't you curious?" Donna says, "Well, mysteriously, my interest in tall, dark mannequins with delusions of grandeur has dwindled, but knock yourself out." Ouch. Donna tells it like it is. Donna has her assessment of Joe. She's had that assessment since the beginning, and it has remained consistent. So Gordon's going to rewind this message. They're going to listen to it again and again. Again, this is the most exciting thing that's happened in the Clark house for a while. So now we're going to go to the garage where it's later on. Gordon is playing tank battle. Donna interrupts. She says, "Babysitter's here." So we're now fast forwarding to the night when they're going to actually go to this dinner. She says the girls are building a fort, babysitter Rose is here to watch them. And, Donna's trying to win at this game, but one of these freeloaders has killed him. Donna says, "Okay, let's get going here. I'm in a shower. We need to be accidentally late on purpose. That's the plan." Gordon says, "I don't know. Can't we not do it? I'm not feeling that great." She's like, "Nope, we agreed, we said we would, we committed. He says, yeah, but what if us two of us just go out? What if we stay the night somewhere, rent a room downtown? Don is like, yes, but no. We told them we're coming. We have to go. So no matter what, for whatever reason, Gordon is sort of backing out. And I don't know why exactly Gordon doesn't feel like going. Joe has more reason to be wary around Gordon, I think, than Gordon has reason to be wary around Joe. But, Donna has talked him back into it. Gordon is going to do one last thing before he leaves. He's going to put the Sonoris disc, he's going to load it. You're going to hear the sound of the modem. He's going to run the program and it's going to upload to Mutiny. And when he's doing that, he's going to quote some Superman lines from what Jor-El says, who says, "They can be a great people, Kal-El. They wish to be. They only lack the program to show them the way." So again, we're getting another Superman reference here. And Gordon is putting himself into this position of thinking that Sonoris is going to be the thing that saves the people, the thing that's going to help Mutiny, even if they don't know that they need it. We'll see how that works out by the end of the episode. Okay, so we're going to go to Mutiny. The guys are having another team meeting. They tested Parallax, chapter 22, plays pretty good for them. I don't know that anybody seems especially excited about this. Bodhi says, yeah, I like the vampire fish ladies. Cam's like, oh yeah, the sea nymphs. I ran out of land-based creatures because they've done 22 chapters of Parallax now. We're going to hear the sound of Tom throwing the ball. The blocking here is really interesting because everybody's crowded around sort of the living room area. And they're all sitting around having a team meeting, looking at each other in sort of a wide circle / oval type of shape. Tom is sitting in a chair where you can lie back, which is faced away from everybody else. And he's throwing a ball up against a wall. He hears what everybody else is saying, but he is the only person who is not looking at the others, who's not engaged in the conversation. So he's throwing this ball up against the wall. Kim gets his attention. She says, Tom, did you play it? Tom says, yeah, let's talk about it in private. Okay. Kim says, no, we all have a voice here. What do you think? Tom hated it. He says, it took me 1.5 hours. It's a rehash. You stole ideas from previous chapters to put them in this one. You hoped nobody would notice. If you get stuck, there's a hairy lampshade that comes swooping in and literally drops clues on your head like dandruff. He says, I wanted to take that thing and fly out of there to some other game, to someplace new. He holds up the Parallax disc. He says, this shouldn't be updated. It should be destroyed. Who says that to, they're all on the team together, right? But she is the leader in this company. And he just says it in front of everybody. And she is fuming. She's like, no, it didn't, no. But it is. And the fact is, nobody in the room was all that excited about Parallax chapter 22. Just nobody else would say it to Cam. And, I think everybody is shocked that Tom is saying this, especially as the new guy. Tom, does he want to lose this job? I don't know that he does. But I really do think that he thought when he walked into Mutiny, he was going to get a space that had life and energy and creativity coming from all corners. And here, the only person who's pitching ideas that are actually getting made is Cam. And she's not even pitching them. She's just doing them and asking everybody else to vet them. So I don't know. I get this feeling. We don't really ever hear this, but it just feels like Tom thought he was going to get something very different. He wanted the feeling that he had by being a user on their platform. He wanted to feel that every day by working there. And that's not what it's like behind the scenes there right now. So I don't know. That's my theory on what he's feeling. And Cam looks hurt. She looks angry. I love this choice of this cut. Cam inhales sharply, like she's going to say something, but we don't ever get to know what she said because the camera cuts to her stabbing. So there's a tennis ball that's already been stabbed, probably the tennis ball that he was throwing up against the wall. And she takes that whole thing, which has been stabbed by her switchblade, and she stabs the whole thing into a desk. And that is what we cut onto. And then we're going to see her in her room alone. She's pacing back and forth. She's like obviously replaying conversations in her head. And the way this is cut, this scene, it's like removing frames here and there. So it's like very stop and start and very there's an energy here. You know, she's furious. But was he wrong? You know, I mean, I can't believe he said it. Nobody could believe he said those things. But it's like, is this what mutiny is? So she's angry, but she kind of pauses and she reflects for a moment. And we're going to cut from there to the dinner party. Joe answers the door of his apartment and he's going to come out and he is wearing a white like a casual white t-shirt, basically an undershirt. And we're going to see later that he's actually barefoot. I don't think we see it in this frame, but can you imagine? When was the last time? I mean, this guy is not the Joe that just has a row of the same looking suit in his closet. So he comes to the door and he answers it, and there are Donna and Gordon dressed up, looking sharp. They can't believe it. He's like, "You guys look great." Donna's going to hand him wine. They brought wine as a little gift. Joe's like, "I should have clarified with the dress code." Gordon says, it's fine. I wear this every day. It's all good. Sarah's going to come to the door, who is basically neither of the options that they predicted. She comes to the door, but she doesn't exactly come to the door. She leans over the couch at the door. She also looks very casual. She's like, "Yay, finally. I heard a lot about you guys. I'm Sarah." And they look shocked to see her. She's nothing like what they pictured. Gordon says, "Hey," and they just stand there open mouthed. Sarah says, "Joe, don't leave them in the hall, you big galoot." And as they're walking in, she says, "I love that word. It comes from the Dutch. It means either galley slave or pirate or pimp. But if I'm lucky, all three, right? Am I right?" It's just this really weird moment, very uncomfortable moment where she's like doing that nervous speaking thing. I don't know if she predicted she would have given the big galoot comment. They're just staring at her like, what on earth? And Joe's gonna offer to get them a drink. Sarah just stands there nervous. She's gonna say, "Gin and tonic, hold the tonic." This is gonna be interesting. Gordon just starts looking around the apartment. This is nothing like Joe's last apartment. And Donna, she's just going to smile at Sarah, because what do you do? Now, in terms of other weird functions, so we're going to get the family function, the rehearsal dinner at the Colonnade restaurant. We're going to see Boz's son is dropping off his car with the valet. And this is the rehearsal dinner that Ginny didn't want Boz to go to. So the camera pulls back. We'll also see Ginny in frame greeting people. The camera pulls back and it's Boz watching all of this from inside his Mustang in the parking lot. I like this choice because it feels like that first camera shot where we see what's happening at the Colonnade restaurant. When we pull back and see that it's Boz watching them, it feels like we were Boz watching this. So Ginny from where she is standing, sees Boz in his car, and she's just like, ugh, and she walks inside. Boz just stares into the distance. Let's go back to the dinner party. So we're going to start with, and it's pre-dinner, before they're eating. They're just all sitting around, just getting to know each other again. And Gordon is telling a story about how he tricked somebody into doing something that he wanted. Joe says, I taught you that trick. Posture-wise, Joe's leaning forward. Sarah's leaning back in her chair. So I'm getting a sense that she's disengaging from this conversation. She's probably been hearing some things that don't resonate for her, and it's like she's just taking it all in. So, and also Joe's face is kind of hit by the light, and hers is sort of blocked by it. So she's in a bit of shadow. So Joe's like, yeah, I taught you that trick. Gordon says, create the sickness, own the cure. Still works. Sarah must be sitting here like, what? Who is this man? Joe says, well, that same thing got me a promotion this week. Sarah shifts in her chair. This is not the truth. This is what's happening. Donna says, so this is a cozy place. Joe says, well, we had a bigger place in Austin. This is just a pied-à-terre for my auteur. He's really putting it on right now. Sarah says, yeah, so I'm trying to finish this article, or at least start it. It's about the Jarvik artificial heart. So it seems like, again, once again, they're pulling in all these pop cultural things that are happening, pop culture, these current events, moments that are happening at this time. Gordon's like, yeah, okay, so nothing serious. And he and Donna look at each other and laugh. And Sarah says, my friend Alicia is doing the layout. She's a professor of design. Joe makes a joke about trying to fix a flat tire with a metaphor. It's a very judgmental joke about academics. Gordon says, gotta love academics. Joe says, yeah, lovely people, total flakes. The same people he was having a, outdoor function with in a previous episode with Sarah. So he's just knocking her friends completely. Sarah sort of grimaces through a smile, and she nods, and she's going to say, hey, Joe, can you help me with something in the kitchen? She says it in a way that feels organic enough, but it's clear that they're leaving the room to have a conversation. So Joe and Sarah go to the kitchen. She's like, who are you right now? What is happening? Don't apologize for my friends, for our friends, for this apartment, or for me. Do not do that. She says, if you're done dick measuring for the evening, you might want to mention the real reason you got the promotion, the truth. Remember that? I mean, I think she's expected a certain amount of transparency in him from the relationship that they've had to this point. And then these people come in from Dallas, and he's this new person. And I think that this weird thing happens sometimes when you operate in these different circles, or you have these different connections, and you are a different version of yourself in those places, and then those people are in the same place, and you have to figure out which version of you to bring to the table. He does not know what to do here. Is he trying to be who he was with Gordon and Donna, or is he trying to be who he is with Sarah? He can't satisfy both of their expectations at once. He can't uphold both sides of himself at this one moment. And so in the beginning of this conversation, the who he thought he needed to be with Gordon and Donna was winning. And Sarah's like, no, that's stopping right now. So they're going to go back out to Gordon and Donna. We're going to catch Gordon and Donna mid-conversation. Gordon's like, the apricots are good. I'm a little heavy on the blue cheese. Okay. And now Sarah shows up again. She says, where were we? Gordon says, academia. Sarah's not interested in pursuing that line of conversation. She says, you say that like it's a nut you're allergic to. Gordon's going to jump in here, says, you know what, Sarah, I like you, and I'm going to give you some really good advice. Don't let Joe hold out on you. Joe, what are you saving all that Cardiff money for? Is it in mutual funds? Looking for a houseboat on Lake Travis? What are you looking to do with it? Gordon and Donna just smile knowingly at each other, because they thought that these two would be living the life of luxury. Joe leans back because he's been given his orders by Sarah, and he's going to take that posture, and he says, I didn't get anything from Cardiff, not a penny. Gordon and Donna freeze. They look surprised. They had absolutely no idea that this is what happened. And then he says, pass the red. Sarah is just smiling with respect. She's like, yep, that's the Joe I knew. That one. Yeah, it's just so strange. This now that he's dropped who he needed to be with Gordon and Donna, he's just sort of going to, he's paved the way for him to be this new version of himself that Sarah has brought out for the rest of the dinner. And that's a much more comfortable space for Sarah as well. So Cam, we're going to go to Cam, who's working with her headphones on, and she's looking at the number of users online. And if you add up all the numbers, it breaks it down by the game. Parallax is 123. We've got Tank Battle, Chess, Checkers, Backgammon. If you actually add up the numbers, we're somewhere between 250 and 300 users that are online playing different games at that moment. Yo-Yo is going to interrupt her. He's going to come in and he says, we need you out here now. As they walk out of the room, the camera angle switches to an overhead shot that's like on a tilt. The world has gone, there's just disarray. Like you can tell because before we even get into the room they're going to, the room they were in is just lopsided, overhead and upside down, and it's just a mess, right? So there's a problem. Bodhi is on the phone fielding a complaint. Everybody is furiously working on their computers, diagnosing, trying to code things. Yo-Yo says, bad software hit our network. It's overwriting our data. Cam says, our drives or the users? Yo-Yo says, both. Arky's saying it just ate chess. Cam's like, what? The tension level is ratcheting up in this room. There's panic starting to happen. Tom says, okay, we need to quarantine the unaffected machines. Cam says, no. She doesn't want to accept what's happening here. Tom's been sitting with this for a minute. She starts walking towards him, and we're getting sort of a walk and talk kind of feel, which I like because this is a really frantic energy. It's like you can't stand in one place. You need to feel like there's movement happening in the room. And Tom says, anyone that's connected right now is vulnerable. She says, we have users online. Lev says, well, it started on Parallax. Carl's saying, Christ, this thing is fast. They're trying to get a hold of this. Lev says, there goes chapter 2. So it's wiping out Parallax. Cam says, can somebody call Donna? Yo-Yo says, we couldn't find your number. Lev says, it's on a Post-it. Cam goes, she picks up a phone, goes to dial it. It's one of those touchpad phones. And it's so funny the way she codes and the way she types numbers in. She gets close to it like she can barely see it, like she has bad vision, and she just like she hunches over things and she presses buttons. And she does that when she's programming, and she's doing it when she's trying to type Donna's number. So she gets the babysitter, Rose, and she says, can I speak to Donna? Tom's watching the whole thing, waiting to figure out what the next move is. He's observing this whole conversation. She's like, well, where? She says, well, did she leave a number? She shouts and she says, I need to speak to Donna right away. The screen in front of her is just rolling through, this program is just eating everything up. So it's tense. And then we're going to cut to the phone call. The phone is going to ring at Joe's. Everybody at the dinner party is at the table. They've eaten, they're finishing dinner. Joe answers the phone. Cam hears his voice in the middle of a crisis. She hears his voice and she freezes. That's where Donna is right now. Cam can't even speak. Joe figures maybe it's a bad, I don't know, whatever. He hangs up. Cam she sits with this. She exhales. She says, shut it down. Lev says, the whole network. Cam nods. She says, everything. Shut it all down. She is not going to talk to Donna right now. So we're at Joe's. Gordon and Joe are sitting outside. They're opening up the wine that Gordon had brought. Joe says, I thought you were strictly a beer guy. Gordon says, yeah, well, I had this little bottle of Sancerre at the Mission last summer. It rocked my world. Joe's like, Sancerre. They drink the wine. Joe's loving it. And he looks inside at Donna and Sarah, but he's really looking at Sarah. And he says, it makes it all worthwhile, doesn't it? Like, yeah, relationships. One of those great moments. He's barefoot. I can't even with Joe being barefoot right now. So Gordon says, yeah, and he's looking at Donna. He's like, yeah, Donna's burning the candle at both ends. Every morning I peel her off the couch and I tuck her in. I guess it's my turn. You traded up. It's good to see her doing so well. The it's my turn, I guess, line that he says here, I think is really, he's trying to make peace with the fact that Donna seems to have a very specific purpose. And, his purpose was just what? Unleashing Sonaris? I don't know. But even that's done now. So, he's glad to see that Joe's doing well. And he says, but why didn't you tell me you got screwed by Cardiff? Joe says, well, I thought I could live with it. Gord says, well, I would have gone to him for you. I wouldn't have split my share of the money, but I would have spoken up on your behalf. And, that's a nice gesture. Not everybody is willing to do those things, but Gordon is saying that he would have. Joe says, I report every morning to a basement. I come home to an apartment that's smaller than my old bathroom. But if you offered me this version of my life or your payout, I'd choose this. I'd choose her. And Gordon nods. Seems like Joe's feeling fulfilled now. Donna's going to come out looking for Gordon. The guys at Mutiny have been trying to reach her, and she called them, but the phone lines are tied up. She says, we need to go. And so they're going to leave. Gordon and Joe are going to shake hands, and Gordon's going to say, enjoy the Sancerre. And Joe just looks glum when they leave. Like this, he was telling the truth, but now he looks glum when they've left. So it's like, is it all worthwhile being there with Sarah? Is that really the case? I just don't see a lot of evidence that he's feeling fulfilled and happy in his life right now, even with the promotion, even with him trying to, figure out what the next step is, combining two departments into one. That's Joe's big idea. So now we're going to see Donna driving the two of them back, Donna and Gordon in the car. I thought that would never end. What is he doing with her? And her with him, is it a savior complex thing that she's got? Gordon says, I don't know. She seems impressive to me. Donna says, I'm sure her father's name opens all kinds of doors. Donna saying this really is highlighting for me, like, why did Joe go back to meet Sarah to begin with? Did he know about her dad? Donna calling this out. How often has Donna been spot on in her description? Her rudimentary description of Joe kind of more accurately represents the picture than all the context other people are adding to their interpretations of him. But that's what she's thinking. Gordon says, look, Joe's happy. That's a minor miracle. And Donna says, well, of course, he has her snowed. So if you're watching this right now, if this is your first watch, do you think he has her snowed? Do you think he's happy here? Like what's the future holding for Joe? All right. So now we're going to see just such an intimate scene here between Boz and his son, James. So James comes out of the restaurant, walks to the car, gets into the car, and he's like, thanks, Pop. Now everybody knows you're out here. Boz says, how are you? And the son says, you couldn't have picked up the phone when you got out. So Boz hasn't even contacted his son at all. This is the first time. Boz says, I wanted to say this in person. He pulls out a letter. His son's like, here we go. Their relationship. Has Boz been there for his son? What is his son expecting here? So Boz starts to read his letter. Well, actually, first he says, look, a rehearsal dinner is a milestone. Just sit back, close your pie hole. James laughs a little bit. And he starts to read the letter, which says, when his mother and I found James on the roof one Christmas, waiting for Santa with a flashlight and a long list of questions, we knew our boy wasn't afraid of a challenge. And now we know Lisa isn't either. Aha, pause for laughter. When James got his first strikeout in Little League, I was on the sales call. When he graduated from high school, I was at a conference in Tampa. I know there are times when it felt like his father was nothing but a head rub in the morning and a shadow in the door at night, but not this night, not tonight. Boz starts struggling. I just like this touch that he wrote the letter. He wanted to deliver it in person and read it in person, but the words were thought through. The intention was all there. And he didn't want it just to be a letter that James read or didn't read. He wanted to be there to deliver it on this day, but he's struggling to get through it. And James has already heard enough to be touched by this. And he says, can I see it? I want to show this to Lisa. He takes it and he smiles. And that seems in this moment like enough to make the peace. So he says, I don't know what mom told you, but I'm not angry at you. I was, but I'm not. And I think between this and his ex-wife saying, like, making the earlier reference to having been ashamed of him, you can just feel that this family, they've been through the emotions with him going away. James maybe has emotions to feel for a whole lifetime full of opportunities that Boz wasn't there for. But there's something nice about hearing that James has put it behind him. So Boz is going to compliment James on Lisa, and he says, well, I'll have you over some night when I settle in. James says, sure thing, better go back in, wife's awaiting. Oh, it's weird to say wife. Boz says, yeah, you'll get used to it, it gets easier. And James says, why don't you come tomorrow? He's inviting him to the wedding. And Boz sits with that a second and he's like, you know what? An ex-con in the front pew, your mother would blow a gasket. Let's another time. I think Boz is probably right that would create an energy at that wedding that might not be pleasant for James and Lisa. James says, but Lisa wouldn't mind and neither would I. Boz says, some other time. Okay, some other time. James is going to get out of the car. It says, take care of this old thing. And he walks back into the restaurant. And Boz just looks satisfied. He did what he went there to do. Now we're going to go to Mutiny, where they're still trying to deal with this issue that Sonoris has unleashed on them. Tom is saying to Cam, look, every disk our subscribers load will be infected. We have to do a clean reboot. We have to tell our users to stay offline until, Cam's like, until what? Until we mail out floppies? Tom says, yeah, we have to mail out new floppies for everything, for every game we make, and probably reimburse them for the total data extinction they're probably facing right now. They're going to blame us for this. Probably lose a lot of subscribers. We hear a door slam. And Cam looks towards the sound of the door slamming because Donna and Gordon have arrived. Donna and Gordon are getting out of the car. The Mutiny team is on their front porch. Tom and Cam come out and join the team on the porch. And Cam says, oh, did you enjoy your finger food and your cocktails? Donna says, what's going on? Love says, a rogue program ate our drives. Bodhi says, nuked all our data. Somebody says, something called Sonoris. Donna looks back at Gordon. Gordon's like, oh my God. Donna says, you sent it? Gordon starts to speak and Cam says, stop. You wrote this? Okay, pause. What a scene this is, okay? Because it's easy to forget this. But Cam hasn't seen Gordon since the hotel room at Comdex, right? Since Gordon stripped out her BIOS, her entire operating system that she created that had the soul, so that they could have one that was a little more straightforward. The machine would run faster and they could sell it for cheaper. That was the last time Cam saw Gordon. And so they're now like, she's confronting that. Like, just seeing Gordon, that by itself already really loaded. The fact that Gordon ran a program, he doesn't even work for her. He's doing something to destroy another business that she's run, another bunch of ideas, all of their original work. He's doing something else to tank all of that. She didn't ask for his help. She didn't even know he was helping. Like she wanted to be left alone. She removed herself from Gordon. And here he is jumping in. Not only is she having to see him again, but he's just written a program that wiped out all of their product. And they both just came from Joe's house. They were all chummy having dinner with Joe. So there's that, which is a huge element. I mean, there's so much going on here. This goes well beyond my entire business is going kablooey right in front of all of us, and it affects every single person on this porch and our livelihoods. But then all of this personal stuff is getting dredged up here too. So Donna didn't know that Gordon went ahead and sent Sonaris. Cam's like, you didn't know you're married to him. Gordon says, we were trying to help you map your network. If let me in there, maybe I can help. Cam starts to make a run for Gordon. Yo-Yo's going to hold her back. She says, you want to help us? Gordon says, I'll buy you some new drives. Like, let me throw money at this problem. Tom says, it's not the drives, asshole. We lost games, original work. Cam says he doesn't know what that is. You couldn't just stay away, Gordon. You couldn't just leave us to do our thing. These lines, it feels like it's not just about it's both the things she's saying about her work at Mutiny and about the work she did at Cardiff Electric. It feels like you can split that off and it means both things. Gordon says, get over yourself. And now they're both really fired up. And Cam's like, which you hate that because it's new and it's brave and because you're on the outside looking in, you sell out. Meanwhile, your wife is doing things you couldn't even imagine. Gordon's like, don't you bring her into this. Who signs your lease? Donna, who Cam can only see the back of her head, but Donna's looking straight at Gordon. She's like, Gordon. She's like, who signs your lease? Who pays your water and your electric behind your back? Donna's the whole reason you haven't been condemned, but you didn't know that, did you? You call this a company? This is more like Nightmare on Nerd Street. So tensions are high. Gordon was trying to help. He was trying to have this purpose. He ruined everything. He wasn't appreciated. He wasn't needed. He's hurting the company he was trying to help. Cam, it's like, leave me alone. Stop messing up the things that I work on, please. She has proper reason to be really fired up right now on many levels. Gordon does not. But Gordon feels attacked because he's getting attacked. And so he's responding defensively. Donna just says, everybody stop. Gordon, go home. Gordon's like, Donna, he wanted Donna to come with him. Nope. She needs to stay and fix this. So Donna's going to walk inside the house. The rest of the team is going to go in and they're going to leave Gordon standing there. I also really like the Nightmare on Nerd Street bit because as a fan of horror movies, of the slasher franchises, I would say Nightmare on Elm Street is my second favorite. So it's a good reference. That was a nice one. And I also had a White House that was prominent in that one. So, okay. So we are now going to go back to the rehearsal dinner. It's the end of the rehearsal dinner and James and Lisa are waiting at the valet and the valet brings keys to them for the wrong car. Lisa's like, that's not your car. The valet brought him the Mustang. James sees it. He knows what it is. He smiles. Boz gifted them this really meaningful car. And he's going to go home on the bus. We're going to see Boz leaning up against the window, looking out, getting ready to sleep it off. Okay, so now we're going to see Gordon opening his garage. He sees all of his machines there. He's walking in slowly. He's kind of stunned at the result of his work. He wants to destroy it. So he tries to pull some wires out, but he can't. He doesn't seem to have the strength to do it. He is too weak. he's going to just throw the equipment to the ground because that's the thing that he can still do. So I don't know. I think it's interesting that we're seeing all these moments of like weird hand stuff and arm strength and stuff like that happening for him. And we're going to just have to, it's just a small touch that they put in here, but it's something I picked up on. Okay, so now we're going to go to the mutiny house. Donna is going to knock on Cameron's door. They both look very tired right now. And it's like a fight, but they're too tired to fight. They're both just very disappointed right now. So Donna's going to give her an update. She says, we got 2 XTs up and running. Games are still down. Community 2 will have to reinstall from the backups. Do you want me to apologize again? This all hurts me too. We're partners. You know, Cam is just looking at her like, you and your words. Cam says, look, this is your job, but it's my life. I live here. I'm always going to catch what has to be dealt with right now because I live here. She says, well, you're at home eating popsicles, walking the dog, or letting an outside party liquefy our business. I'm here. And by the way, why didn't you tell me you were having dinner with Joe McMillan? Ah, there it is. I mean, there were a lot of things to cover here, but that needed to be said for Cam. Donna's like, well, I was pretty sure you'd hold it against me. Cam's like, yes, correct. That's what's happening. Donna says, it was just dinner. Cam says, just go home to your husband. And Donna, if you ever put another dime of your own money into mutiny behind my back, you're fired. Donna's going to leave. And so first of all, coming off of that fight, it's a fight. There were words that needed to be said. There were things that needed to be put out in the open, and they're out in the open. And Cam's feeling a lot of pain, both professionally and personally right now. Donna's feeling a lot of pain professionally right now. Cam sends her away. It's like, I don't need your help. But Cam does need help right now. And this is what I love about this. We're going to see Donna. She passes Lev on her way out. She rejects a ride home from Lev. Donna leaves the house. She closes the door hard enough that Cam can hear it. She gives it a second. She opens the door very gingerly. She walks back into the house as quietly as she can. She leans over to Lev and she says, what can I do? I just love that. It's like, look, Cam's hurting right now on a lot of levels. It's been a hard day for all of us. This is also hurting in a very personal way for Cam. Donna knows that. And she wants to help and she doesn't want to make it a thing. You know, she's going to make sure Cam thinks she's gone. And then she's going to come back and stay up all night to try to help. I really love that touch so much. And we'll also notice like Yo-Yo's fallen asleep on a chair. But Tom is still up working. And Lev is still up working. And, you know, there are people still trying to make this thing better. And Donna wants to be one of them. All right, so then we're going to see the next morning. We're going to hear the song Collapse by Vancouver Sleep Clinic. I really like this choice. We're going to get this very artistic, disgusting shot of all of the dirty dishes in the sink, a close-up of the dishes with the ants crawling all over them. And then we're going to pull back a little bit. We're going to see how big the pile of dishes actually is. It's just that place is a mess. And then we're going to see Archie sleeping on the floor. We're going to see Carl sleeping on the floor. We're going to watch Donna get into a cab. It's the morning. They've been doing this all night trying to fix the problems. And then we're going to see Cam in her office. She's got messy hair. She's just been up all night. She's so tired. She looks at the user numbers, the current user numbers, and all of the games are at 0. They have lost everything. They've lost everyone. And Cameron, with the camera right up close to her, struggles to breathe. She's starting to hyperventilate. We're getting in really close. We're looking at her hands. She's trying to get control of herself. She cannot get comfortable. She starts to pace. We're going to see these like it looks like quick cuts, but it's really just like removing frames. And it's just like this stop and start. It's very uncomfortable, very off center. Tom, who's like just like he's, I guess, been working all night up until this point. He's like so sleepy and bleary eyed, and he starts to walk in. He's like, "Hey, Cameron." And he's going to tell her something business related, but then he intercepts this and he sees she's having a panic attack, a full blown panic attack, full on hyperventilation. She's like, "Give me a second," and she's hyperventilating, and he looks alarmed, but knows how to deal with it. So like there's the instant like from him, but then he comes right over to her. He's like, "Whoa, breathe." He just like puts his hand on her. He says he sort of physically spins her around and sits her down. And the way we are with the camera for a second, we are off balance as he spins her around to sit her down on the couch. But he's going to make her sit. He's going to kneel in front of her. He's like, "Okay," and he sort of triages. It's like he's had experience with this. He says, "Okay, nod or shake your head. Should I call a doctor?" She said she shakes her head no, but she's still having a hard time breathing, which is interesting, right? Because she knows enough about herself. We've seen her have a panic attack before. We saw it in season 1 when she went up to the roof, when Joe had basically just fake destroyed all of her work, but she thought it was real. And we've seen her do this. So she has panic attacks, and she knows enough to know she's not in the middle of dying or having a major physical problem, but she doesn't know how to not have panic attacks. She shakes her head. He says, "Are you on any medication?" She shakes her head. And so he says, "Squeeze my hand harder, focus on me, squeeze my hand." So he's trying to sort of ground her in the present. It's a lot of really interesting techniques he's using here. And then he's going to get her to focus in on something. So he asks her a question about parallax. He's like, "Okay, chapter 3, double slide in the cave with the 4 wizards. Focus, Cameron. Like, how do you get the dragon's egg across the chasm?" Cameron's like, "What?" Like, "I'm having a crisis here, man. Stop with the parallax." It's like, no. So if you jump, you drop it, right? But there's a rope bridge, but the eggs are too heavy for the rope bridge. She's like shaking her head. She's like, "What is happening right now?" It's so disruptive that he's like making her think about this other thing, which is the point. And then he says, "Okay, Cameron, what do you do? What do you do with the eggs?" She's like, okay. You, I don't know. You go back. He's like, "Right, exactly." So you go back, you go inside, you face the 4th wizard, and then only by cracking the egg in his chest can you make him human again. There's this really intense eye contact that's happening here. And she's squeezing his hand. He's talking about parallax. He's like, "You know what? That's what I miss about parallax, those early chapters. Every trap had a reward. Every exit was actually an entrance. The whole thing made me feel like the Wizard of Oz, but it was better because you were inside." And he just waxes poetic about this game she loves, that he loves. There's this deep connection, and he is just telling her this story of her own work. And you can see that she's calming down. And Tom says, "All right, I'm going to let go. Okay. I'm going to get you some water. Don't go anywhere. Okay. I'll be right back." And he leaves to go get the water. And then the camera just stays on Mackenzie Davis's face, her face. I mean, Mackenzie Davis has such an expressive face and eyes. And we just see her sort of frozen, and then we see her start to cry. And it's sort of a less is more cry with her. But I mean, she's just sort of sitting with this. But Tom kind of got her on the other side of this panic attack. I also really like this his point about every trap had a reward. Every exit was actually an entrance. That every now and then you'll hear a quote in this show that feels like an existential thing. And for me, him saying that, it's like the story of Cam's life and the story of what she built into Parallax. And it's something that made him fall in love with that game. So, I just, I remember the first time I saw this episode. We just met Tom last episode, and he's being a jerk, trying to get noticed, screwing things up so that they can come find him and fix it. And then he gets hired to work with Mutiny, which perhaps was maybe that was his outright goal, or maybe that was a great side benefit. Maybe he just wanted to meet the makers. But he gets this job, and now he's at Mutiny, and he's like, this is Mutiny. And so you could be critical of Tom up until this point, but I think honestly, after this scene in particular, I remember the first time I watched this, coming away from this thinking, you know what? Like, we had Joe and Cam together in season 1, and I always felt like very protective of Cam, because I don't know that relationship in season 1 was good for either of them with where they were in that moment. There were moments it felt like it was getting to a better place, but those two together, it just didn't look healthy to me. And he was so much older than her, and I felt like he was not, I don't know. I just wanted to protect Cameron. And season 1 ends and they're not together, but then we see him playing tank battle with her anonymously, and it's like, oh, leave her alone. And then we meet Tom, and I remember seeing this scene with the panic attack and thinking, wow, I want more with these two. I feel like this could be a healthier thing for her, at least. We don't know enough about Tom, but like the way that he is able to drop everything and really be there in a moment of crisis, and be there for her, and like help keep her calm and like literally ground her. He knew what she needed. He provided it. It was what she needed. And on top of it all, we learn what really, like, the love that he has for her work product. That's the stuff. She puts her soul into her work. And if somebody appreciates it on that level, who's ever talked with her about her work in the way that Tom just did? I remember the first time I saw this, and I just thought, I want more with these two. I think I want this to be a good option for Cam. Like, I didn't know where the story was headed, but I wanted this to be a good option for Cam. So that is my thoughts about Tom and Cam. And that's a lot of heavy lifting for a scene like this to do. And awesome job to everybody involved. Okay, so we're going to see Donna. She's now at home. She's gotten home. She's going to sit on the edge of the bed. She's, pulling her hair down. She's trying to get ready to just go to sleep. Gordon wakes up. He's like, how bad is it? She says, it's bad. Gordon says, I should have tested it more. I got excited. I should have told you. Donna says, I let it happen. Like, I knew you were doing it. I didn't stop you. Gordon says, what was the issue? And Donna's like, just don't. Let's not. And she is going to pick up all the transcripts. She's going to hug them like a stuffed animal and go to sleep. It's like her comfort item. She doesn't even hug Gordon. She hugs the transcripts from Community and goes to sleep. Okay. We're now going to get one more scene. Joe is going to punch in at work. Eugene's on the phone on a personal call. He's going to get off the phone. Joe goes over to his desk, and there's one of those decoys, like a duck, just blank duck on the desk. And Joe looks over at Eugene, and he says, Eugene, meet me in the mainframe room. So, Joe's supposed to be firing the whole team, right? So Joe goes into the mainframe room, and he starts looking around, and then he hears the sound of the mainframe turn on. And he looks at the clock. It's 9 a.m. exactly. And he has an idea. He goes over to look at a binder of their logs, user manuals. I don't know. And the binder just says the product name for the mainframe and Cardiff Electric at the bottom. It's like, aha. So Joe's having an idea. Eugene enters, and Joe says, these machines, do they work the same shift as us? Eugene says, yeah, 9 to 5. Joe's like, So millions of dollars of hardware just sit here idle, unused for 16 hours a day. It's a way in. Eugene says, okay, back to work then. Joe says, yes, sir. And Joe looks very happy. So for those who are new to the show, I leave you with this question. What is this a way in to? Could be a whole bunch of things, right? But Joe's getting excited. What is this a way in to? And I'm going to leave that there because I can't say anything else about that. But I you know, this does spark an idea. This is the most excited we've seen Joe in a minute. So okay, good to know. All right, let's talk about music for this episode. So we're going to start with Good Morning Judge by 10cc. That was from 1977. That's when Gordon's listening to his headphones working on the Sonorous code at the very start of the episode. Then we're going to hear Rock Island Line by Johnny Cash from 1957. Boz drives to meet his ex-wife, Ginny, at the motel. Then we're going to hear Conditioned by Stalag 13, which is a 1984 song. That is the song that's playing in Cam's headphones when Yo-Yo comes in to say, we've got a problem, and it's Sonorous. And then lastly, we've got Collapse by Vancouver Sleep Clinic from 2014. And this is the song that's playing that morning after the all-nighter when the team is dealing with Sonorous. And we're going to see those like close-up shots of the ants all over the dishes. It's like such a beautiful but gross scene. So that's the music. Now, in terms of my favorite quote, I'm going to give you two honorable mentions and then a favorite. So the first honorable mention is a Gordon quote. And he says, you call this a company? This is more like Nightmare on Nerd Street. Let's see. And then I'm debating on the order of these. I'm going to give you another honorable mention from Ginny Bosworth, who says, we're not your satellites anymore, spinning around the big man. And then my favorite quote of the episode is Donna saying, mysteriously, my interest in tall, dark mannequins with delusions of grandeur has dwindled. Ouch. Donna is so good at knowing what she thinks exactly about Joe. And it's not always popular opinion, but Donna has a definite impression of Joe. And that's such a cool way to describe him. All right, let's talk about some feedback. And I'm very pleased to share some feedback with Patrick Squires. Patrick Squires, welcome. Patrick has a few things to say here. First of all, there's a general question here. I think Patrick has some tech knowledge. Patrick says, why are they hustling for XTs when they have insight on stacks and stacks of compacts? And pretty sure the BIOS compatibility is not a problem. So this is probably in reference to the prior episode. Or to the episode earlier when they were trying to get more XTs and they were, being a little shady to get them. And next, on just like sort of season 2 in general, it seems like Patrick is saying, this time around, I have to say I'm way less invested in Joe's new personal life by this episode. I think of all the stories of Halt and Catch Fire, this is the least interesting, least invested story for me. Not sure if I'm missing something at the writer's table or if I'm burned by knowing more about Joe or what. Yeah, I think, Patrick, that we don't like in all of season 1, I won't speak ahead to the future, but in all of season 1, we've only seen Joe be sort of fired up and excited and having an idea and pursuing an idea and trying to manipulate people and convince things. And where we've started in season 2, he's living kind of a mundane punch in, punch out lifestyle. So if you're feeling less invested in this, it's probably because I don't know that Joe's particularly invested in this storyline for himself in his life. I think that's very much the idea here, that he is being asked to live this humdrum existence, or what he feels is a humdrum existence, and he doesn't want to be humdrum. But here we are. So I think that lines up really well. I think that your experience with this part of the story is probably lining you up with Joe himself. Okay, so Patrick also shares this. The tank random fire question, the tank battle random fire question is great because to me it showed the great grounded truth here and there the writers worked with for the material. This problem in gaming was very true in shooters and skill versus skill games earlier on. So many tricks were done to make games feel very intense and real time when truthfully there were so many limitations in getting true real time gameplay to work. The stolen copy game thing hits home. In middle school and junior high, before the internet, my friends and I were the kids with the computer games and selling them for lunch level kind of money. We amassed stacks of discs by just trading games for other games and discs. And in the end, I learned a lot about computers by inadvertently breaking friends' computers and getting all these games and apps to work. Oddly, I went through all of school doing all this computer stuff, never really playing the games a lot other than Railroad Tycoon, never realizing it would lead to an entire IT career. That's pretty cool. Thank you for sharing that, Patrick. I think we all have a different way into this show. Some of us have more than one thing. And for you, like there's so many things that must resonate for you as part of your experience. So thank you for sharing that. And also for giving us some context on the tank battle issue that we saw previously that Gordon was trying to fix with the timestamps. Okay. David Williams has a bunch of, I was having a conversation with David. Hi, David Williams. First of all, that was rude of me. I just dove right in. Hello, David Williams. Thank you for writing. David and I were having some back and forth on YouTube in the comments about, and now, okay, we've been around the horn around this with who ordered the beatdown on Joe. And David has a lot to say about this, and I wanted to pull it in here because I also think that with what we're learning about Boz in season 2, I want to add some levels onto this about why I struggle so much with this plot point from season 1. So first, let me read some of what David said here. He says, I've heard/seen lots of discussions about who got the cops to put their hands to Joe. I think that if you trust what the show is putting in front of you, unlike, say, Lost, for example, then you can say with some confidence that it was Boz. It is true that this is the most extreme thing Boz does in the whole show, and that he and Joe get on pretty well in the future, considering that one gave the business to the other. But this is what the episode shows us. When Nathan has the horse put down, what he is pressing Boz on is the question of who exactly is in charge. He doesn't like that Boz doesn't know why Gene Smart isn't returning his calls. I think the implication is that if Boz isn't really in charge of this project and Joe, then he's as much use as the injured horse. Boz is challenged to assert his control. Boz is a good old boy, and his way of doing business is largely based on who he knows and how well connected he is in Texas. He is a decent-sized fish in a smallish pond. He wouldn't be nearly as useful in Silicon Valley just yet. Think of the episode where he is at the squash club, networking with customers he went to school with, and talking about donating to the Players Fund at SMU. Another tangent, that's a real historical thing, and the payments to the players got for the SMU's football program shut down for years, the death penalty. So Boz's motivation in the episode is to take control. He is feeling very threatened. He doesn't want to take up taking the bullet like the horse did. He doesn't want to end up taking a bullet like the horse did. Then think about the scene at the police station. Boz calls the cops by their first names and asks about their families in a very relaxed way. He's showing off to Joe. The cops don't ask him what he's doing there or what he wants. He doesn't give them any message or ask them what's going on. They just immediately unlock Joe and lose interest in him. Joe stays stoic and doesn't say or do much. He just stands up and walks out. I think that tells you he knows exactly what happened just from how Boz turned up and got him released. If he had no idea what had just happened, he would be more likely to ask questions or show some confusion, but he doesn't. I think his reaction is the reaction of someone who is trying to stay strong while he gets the message loud and clear. It's disappointing to see Boz do this. To me, that's the best argument for saying that maybe it wasn't him. He just doesn't want it to be like that, because we just don't want it to be like that because we like him. But I also think the episode doesn't leave a lot of ambiguity. I'll pause that there. So this is a conversation back and forth, right? So my initial thought as I sit with this, look, I've heard compelling cases for things that they plant in the episode that could say that it's Nathan Cardiff. I'm hearing really good evidence to suggest that it's Boz. My initial theory way back when of Lulu, there's just not enough to support that I'm considering that still. But I think where I'm sitting with this and where I'm struggling with it is that we have heard, and in fact, from my recent interview with Juan Campanella, who was a director on the show for 5 episodes, including the pilot, it sounds like when Toby Huss took on this role, Toby Huss really shifted what this character of John Bosworth was going to be like. John Bosworth was maybe going to have a different sort of character description or personality when he was initially drawn up, but then the way Toby Huss was playing it, Boz went in a different direction. And that probably happened somewhere along the line in season 1. So, maybe Boz getting this beatdown ordered on Joe was something that it was in line with that, perhaps. And then eventually, his character sort of veered into a different direction. Look, I've seen arguments for either person. Where I think I really struggle with all of this is that, without spoiling anything for people who are new to the show, we are already beginning to see at this point in season 2, Boz is making different choices. And you might even say he was in season 1. His relationship with Cam, I think, was in many ways softening him. And here we are in season 2, and he's had heart-to-hearts with Cam. He's had heart-to-hearts, he just had this heart-to-heart with James. He wrote James this entire letter and delivered it and was struggling to get through it. He was writing back and forth to Cam when he was in prison. I think the very fact that he was in prison probably changed Boz quite a bit. And, Boz and Joe are 2 central characters in this story. And I don't think that we will ever experience Boz having remorse or even referencing the beatdown on Joe ever. I mean, I could be forgetting something. So somebody, if I'm forgetting a scene from a future episode, please let me know. Boz, maybe he wasn't like this before he went to prison, but after he went to prison, he is a guy who has heartfelt conversations with people, who writes letters, who gets into it, who's been introspective, who has things to say. And he's going to continue to have experiences with Joe. And I don't think this comes up. And I feel like I'm missing a scene. I feel like there's something that I need here that it doesn't line up for me, that we're already seeing Boz become this softer, more introspective version of himself who needs to make amends with people for things, but not that. So I don't know. I needed another scene there. Nathan Cardiff, maybe we also needed some evidence there. Maybe we needed more to back that up. I don't know. But that's where I'm struggling with this. I think because when I watch back that season and I see that episode, I come in knowing about stuff like that's already happening in the first 3 episodes of season 2. This is the guy that Boz is now. And so I'm just having a hard time reconciling that piece. So I thank you so much, David, for sharing your thoughts on that, because I think this is a great time to bring it back up with the information we've been getting about Boz in these new episodes to see where things go. All right, now, present hour 24. So glad to have you back. Present hour 24 has some things to say about season 2, episode 1. Where he said, he, she, you say, Cameron and Donna trying to get the computers was my favorite scene in this episode. Cameron dealing with some shady computer guy and Donna trying to be the good person and investigate. I just think Cam is so funny because she wants to be right all the time, and yet she ends up doing a bunch of punk things like stealing electricity from the neighbors and saying it's fine because they're rich. So I sat with present hour 24's comment here for a minute, and something that occurs to me is that when Cam does punk things and shady things, I don't think she does it to act out. She doesn't do it because she's got anger issues or like, she doesn't do it to be a punk. In my eyes, she does it because she had to learn somewhere along the way that she had to take care of herself. Seems like she's really been going it alone for a long time, and she's figured out how to put food on the table at every step because of her own actions. And it wasn't always like honest options that were available to her to do that. So she's gotten creative and resourceful, and sometimes does these things where you're like, oh, that's shady what you did there, or that's outright criminal. But I think it's a survival mechanism for her, and she's gotten this far because of it. And so, you know, even though she's perhaps in a better position, although maybe not at the end of this episode, she's in a better position, but she's still got that survival way of figuring out the best way to get to a safe space. So I'm looking forward in this rewatch to really finding what I can about her backstory and understanding more about why she has this instinct. Okay, everybody, you know and love him. It's Evan the Stray. Okay, so first of all, on a previous episode, on season 2, episode 2, Evan says, Boz's reception in the Greater Mutiny team is interesting. Mostly I noticed Yo-Yo being positive and Lev being a little negative. I'm guessing rumors had been exchanged so many times they covered a spectrum of potential scenarios for who exactly did what and where in the bank hack. So this was in reference to my thoughts about like, what is the perception of Boz in that house after Boz going to prison? Because how people were talking about him, how Yo-Yo was even talking about him at the end of season 1 is pretty different from how he's received. But there is something about this where it's like the legend of Boz. Like there have been many rumors, many stories that have gone around. And I wonder if we think Yo-Yo was more positive and Lev was more negative, which is how that played out in season 2, episode 2. Which of the guys on the team are paying more attention to Yo-Yo and which of them are closer to Lev? And does that influence how the stories are trickling down? There's sort of a folklore that's going through the mutiny team about Boz. And so I do think that's kind of interesting to consider. He's just such a legend at this point. And what's fact? What's fiction? Who did what? How was Cam involved? Was she involved? Everybody knows Boz doesn't have that technical knowledge. So, you know, who's to say? All right, so regarding this episode, Evan has an assortment of thoughts for us. So, oh, that Commodore 64 and Programmer's Guide looks so familiar. And Gordon's headphones look like the Marantz model we had, but slightly lighter brown. The Jolt Cola, solid retro here. Love it. So it sounds like Evan's really picking up on a lot of these set decoration and prop details that we're getting along the way. And I imagine a lot of work went in to making sure that they had stuff that looked appropriate to that time period. And another thing on that line, Evan says, Boz's 67 fastback is retrieved from Barry, and it's so nice. It's quite reminiscent of Steve McQueen's 68 model in Bullet. Yeah. Look, I don't know a lot about cars. I had Mustang. That's what I had. But it's a 67 fastback is what it is. It's beautiful. Evan says, data compartmentalization for the compartmentalized, stifled mind in West Group Energy's data entry team. Pain. Got a couple things here that bring Evan pain. Also, one is the optical scanner can't tell the difference between lowercase i's and l's, and they have to manually correct these. Pain. Yeah. Look, everything that's happening at West Group Energy is just hard to cope with and hard to live with, and is just sort of lulling Joe into submission? Or is it? Evan, who has previously been critical of some songs used around the character Boz, says Rock Island Line, Johnny Cash. Now, this is a solid gold Boz song. I agree. I really like this song choice. And boy, is it hard to sing. Just try it. Everybody just try it. See what happens. Okay. I think that Evan and I are currently counting up. It's like a little game. We're counting up times that Sarah receives red flags and doesn't do a thing about them. So Sarah's unreciprocated "I love you" looks. Sarah's unreciprocated "I love you" looks like it burned her, as she was already struggling with the day. But Joe scheduling the 4 o'clock appointment with Jacob Wheeler in front of his boss was great payback for his boss's chest puffing over Joe's personal call. I mean, yeah, to have that touch where like Sarah says "I love you" into a dial tone because he's already hung up the phone. Ouch, you know? Maybe by the end of this episode, you could say that she gets some redemption in that he does tell the truth in front of Gordon and Donna after she presses him on it. That probably helps. Evan says, previously, I'd never given it much thought, but chat rooms were the first potentially immediate response internet-driven social media. Yeah, and there was sort of an evolution of that over time as well, right? I mean, I think for me, something like AOL Instant Messenger was something that was pretty prominent. And I was not there for like the mid 80s versions of this that might have been available, but this doesn't look that different from something like an AOL Instant Messenger, except that, you could have these direct to one person conversations. Okay, let's see. Joe's having the experience of firing his own boss presented to him by Jacob, similar to when Cam wrestled the reins from her old boss at Cardiff and chose her team of coder monkeys. Yeah, that's so true, right? The guy who had the Great American Hero poster up on his wall, she just came in and overtook him, and Joe's done the same thing. And we heard from Joe Sr. at one point that Joe had done something similar with a person on his team, but had he ever fired his boss? So maybe he took that inspiration from Cam's action earlier on. Evan says, Joe has to invite the closest people to friends that he has to not embarrass himself in front of Sarah to a dinner at Joe and Sarah's apartment. Then, when said friends reluctantly arrive, a different mask is donned by Joe, which is not a flattering look to Sarah, and she wants him to tell the truth. Yeah, I just can't help but think about what that experience is when you, because in life, we're not exactly the same version of ourselves with each person that we talk to. There are often sometimes subtle nuances, sometimes bigger ones. And, there may be topics, subjects that you're comfortable to have in conversation with some people versus others, inside jokes, ways that you interact. And so when you have two sets of people that you're very different with, and then you put them in the same room, it's such like a cognitive dissonance that happens. And it was sort of fun to see that play out here and to see the confusion that creates with the other people as well. Evan says, Tom seems to already dislike his new job by acting out with a negative tone and by being quite harsh reviewing a game update. Right. And Evan, I think where I landed, but when I was watching this was just like, I just think he thought he was going to get something more inspiring and more personal and far different when he showed up at Mutiny. But kind of the only person who, like, when we hear him at the end of this episode talk about what has inspired him about Parallax was created only by Cam. It's her game. It's her ideas. It's her brainchild. She is the heart and soul of Mutiny. And it's the thing that he loved. So it's, like when he meets everybody else, yeah, they're neither here nor there. It's whatever drives Cam that's motivating to Tom. And he's not really seeing that when he first shows up at the Mutiny house. So it's like, this is it. I think that's my instinct about why he's kind of lackluster about this new job. Okay, so Evan says Joe reveals to Gordon that he never got paid by Cardiff, but he's happy with his life with Sarah in the small apartment now. It feels like Joe's trying to convince himself that he's content. I agree with that. I agree with that assessment. And I mostly agree with that because of the face he makes when Gordon leaves dinner. And he looks so gloomy. After having said he's happy right now, Gordon leaves and it's like all the fulfillment just walked out the door. Evan says Gordon's network mapping software Sonaris ends up functioning like wiper malware and devastates Mutiny's data and their customers' data alike. This leads to Cam having a panic attack, which a knowledgeable Tom helps her work through in a surprisingly kind way. Thank you for giving those terms. Wiper malware. Okay. I mean, it's bad. It's really bad. Gordon is so new to programming and to coding that he like, how did this thing have this result? Like, wow, that it just infects every computer. All he was trying to do was count up the number of people. He must have really messed up somewhere along the way. He took a right turn instead of a left somewhere. Okay, Cam feels betrayed by Donna for having dinner at Joe's, knowing that Gordon was working on the software and not saying anything to Cam. And Donna is secretly propping up Mutiny with her own cash. Hurt feelings abound in Cam, Donna, and Gordon from the careless deployment of Sonaris. Yeah, and I think, look, I understand it from all of their standpoints. Gordon's hurt and upset, perhaps not rightfully so. Like leave Cameron alone. Don't just jump in and start working on something and then deploy it without even ever once having a conversation with Cam post Comdex in the previous season. That's a lot. And so if something goes wrong here, maybe this was Gordon's way of trying to ingratiate himself with Cam. Maybe this was his attempted olive branch, but Gordon. So I think his hurt feelings really come from he wanted to be helpful and he's being hurtful inadvertently. And that's not the purpose in life he wants. I think Donna's trying to find this balance between Cameron and between Gordon. And, she is really trying to navigate this partnership with Cameron along the way as well. And then Cam, for me, the number of grievances that Cam should have in this episode that she did have is very high. This is a lot. This is too much. She's, she started this thing on her own to get away from all of, all of the pain she experienced at Cardiff. And now it's followed her. What did she do? What did she do to deserve that? Now, granted, she brought in Donna, and that comes in with its own baggage, right? So something to consider. But I get why Cam's not feeling good about this. There's many, many reasons that she could list off for why she's not happy in this episode. Evan says, Boz's pain he reveals to his son in Galveston is from him phoning in his fatherhood duties and loyalties. However, showing up for his career instead of his family. Yeah, I think Boz really did some thinking in prison. And I think he's trying to figure out what to do about all that right now. And he's making these steps. He's taking steps. And James, it seems like, is willing to listen to that. Ginny, not so much. Okay. Evan shares top cast quotes in chronological order. And we have a couple in common here this time, Evan. From Tom, must have left it at home with my clown nose. Don't diss Tom's bike, okay? Boz says, oh, what? I make all your other boyfriends hang fire? I don't even know what that means. I need to look that quote up. A quote from Jacob. Seat opens up on a crowded train. It's okay to hesitate. Maybe you're the next stop. Maybe you're a good Samaritan. Or maybe you think you don't deserve it. Here's one we have in common, Evan. Donna says, mysteriously, my interest in tall, dark mannequins with delusions of grandeur has dwindled. But hey, knock yourself out. Sarah says, I love that word galoot. It comes from the Dutch. It means either galley slave or pirate or pimp. But if I'm lucky, all three, right? That was a nervous thing to say. Joe says, probably stuck outside Waco trying to fix a flat tire with a metaphor. That's Joe's description of Sarah's academic friend. That's about where Sarah put her foot down, right? And then Gordon saying, you call this a company? This is more like Nightmare on Nerd Street. Ouch. I mean, okay. It's a good reference. I like that. I like that line very much. And that, folks, is season 2, episode 3. And it's the way in. But the way into what? We're going to find out soon enough. So everybody, I'm looking forward to getting to the next episode. And in the meantime, thank you for joining me, and be sure to watch Halt and Catch Fire. Bye, everyone.